Sleep. It's the gentle reset button we all press every single night. It's this fundamental rhythm of life that we just take for granted. But tonight, we're going to tell you a story where that rhythm just stops permanently.
I mean, really think about that for a second. I'm not talking about a bad night or even a week of insomnia. Imagine the complete, irreversible, and terrifying loss of the ability to sleep forever.
Well, for one family, this wasn't some hypothetical question. It was a curse, a dark secret passed down from parent to child, hidden away in the quiet villages of Italy. This is the story of fatal familial insomnia.
To really understand the science behind this disease, we have to go back. We have to uncover its history, a mystery that haunted a single family for centuries.
You see, this curse wasn't some modern problem. The earliest recorded case we know of dates all the way back to 1765. For more than 200 years, the family just watched as their loved ones, usually in middle age, would simply stop sleeping. They'd become delirious, their bodies would waste away, and then they would die. They only knew it as the family disease, a shadow that brought fear and isolation. And for 2 centuries, that mystery stayed locked away, until the 1980s, when this family story finally collided with modern medicine.
That's how a physician from within the family described it, way back in the 1800s. So long before science had a name for it, they knew what they were dealing with. It was peculiar, it was about sleep, and it was always, always fatal.
The turning point in this whole story really comes down to one person, a man who refused to be just another victim and instead chose to face the family curse head-on. His name was Silvano. He had already watched 2 of his sisters and many other relatives die from this disease. So when he started to show the first signs himself, that creeping, familiar insomnia, he didn't hide. He traveled to the University of Bologna and presented his family's entire tragic history to some of the world's best sleep doctors, absolutely determined to find an answer.
As the disease ravaged his mind and body, Silvano made a final, truly heroic choice. He agreed to donate his brain for research. His personal tragedy was going to become science's greatest clue. He knew he couldn't be saved, but he was absolutely determined that others might be.
And Silvano's sacrifice? It cracked the case wide open. What researchers discovered lurking inside his brain was stranger and honestly more terrifying than any curse. The culprit was something called a prion. Now, what's so wild about this is that prions aren't a virus or a bacteria. They're our own proteins, just gone rogue. A normal, healthy protein suddenly misfolds into a toxic shape. And then, kind of like a zombie, it forces other healthy proteins that it bumps into to misfold in the exact same way, setting off a devastating cascade.
And it all starts with a single genetic typo, the D17N mutation, in a gene called PRNP. This gene is the blueprint for that protein. And because the gene is dominant, a parent who has this mutation has a 50-50 chance, a coin toss, of passing what is basically a fatal countdown clock to each of their children.
So here's how that one tiny error leads to a total catastrophe. The flawed gene creates a really fragile protein. Then, sooner or later, one of them just misfolds. That one event kicks off the chain reaction, converting more and more proteins. These toxic prions then start to clump together, and they specifically target and destroy brain cells in one critical area, the thalamus. So, the thalamus. You can think of it as the brain's master gatekeeper. It regulates nearly everything: sensation, consciousness, and, most importantly for our story, our sleep-wake cycle. When these prions systematically destroy this region, they are essentially demolishing the gatekeeper of sleep itself.
And with that gatekeeper gone, the brain just descends into a state of chaos that it can never come back from. So let's look at the terrifyingly predictable path this disease takes.
So the family curse finally had a name: fatal familial insomnia, or FFI. It's a rare inherited prion disease that causes one core symptom, a total, untreatable inability to sleep that leads to a complete neurological breakdown.
The progression is just brutal and shockingly fast. It starts with insomnia that just keeps getting worse, paranoia, panic attacks. Then, as the thalamus breaks down, hallucinations and severe anxiety set in. The body systems go into total overdrive. In stage 3, sleep becomes completely impossible, and the body just begins to shut down. And the final stage is a descent into dementia and being unable to speak before the body finally gives out.
On average, from the very first symptom to the last breath, the entire process takes just 18 months.
an incredibly swift and cruel timeline.
FFI is really defined by 4 unyielding facts. It is genetic, it is progressive, it is incurable, and it is always 100% fatal.
But the story doesn't just end in despair. Thanks to Silvano and the families who followed his lead, science is now in a race against this genetic clock.
Researchers are now attacking this genetic puzzle from every angle they can, piecing together all the clues that could, maybe, lead to the first effective treatment.
Some of the research has focused on an antibiotic, doxycycline, to see if it can slow things down. But the real hope, well, it lies in genetics. Therapies like gene silencing are trying to turn down the production of that faulty prion protein before it can misfold. The goal is basically to disarm the bomb before it ever has a chance to go off.
But for now, we have to be clear, there is no cure. Treatment for FFI is palliative care. It's about providing comfort and managing these devastating symptoms without actually stopping the inevitable progression of the disease.
Which brings us right back to where we started. The story of FFI is a tragic, real-life experiment that reveals a profound truth. Sleep isn't just some daily convenience. It is the absolute foundation of sanity, of health, of life itself. When that gatekeeper is destroyed, we're left with a body and a mind in a permanent state of emergency, a waking nightmare that proves just how essential the quiet mystery of sleep truly is.